little Brushaflies, welcome back to my channel, Brushafly MUA. I'm just checking my necklace. It's caught in my hair again. That's like a running theme through these videos where I look like this. Yeah, if you're new, hi. My name is Mercedes, I'm the face behind Brushafly MUA. If you are new, remember to hit that subscribe button, and if you're not, welcome back. So today is just a quick little chatty video, or I hope it'll be kind of quick and chatty. Just going through the makeup products that I think are best from the drugstore, but also some that I will only buy or like from higher end brands. But yeah, I saw Kelly Gooch do a video like this, and she was like, my favourite products I buy from the drugstore, and I thought I could do something like that, but maybe combining a bit of what I will only buy from high end as well. So let's dive straight in and see what I think is best from the drugstore. Like, don't waste your money on high end unless you really have to. So the first product I'm going to say is primer. So this is an e.l.f. Luminous Putty Primer. I have tried loads of primers. This is just one I had to hand that I'm going to show just to say primer. Primers I think are actually best from the drugstore. So a primer is something that gets your skin ready for the rest of the makeup you're going to apply. It stops it from being absorbed funny on your skin, so it stops it going patchy, but also makes it last a lot longer. I have tried a couple of high-end ones and I've tried loads of drugstore ones, and I have to say most of my favourite ones are drugstore. So I really like this one from e.l.f. I like the No. 7 Airbrush Away. Yes, No. 7 can possibly be considered a higher priced drugstore family, but I do like No. 7 and I do consider them drugstore. I have also tried some from I Heart Revolution, their little chocolate ones. They are also really good. So I do think for a primer you don't need to go and spend stupid money. I think a drugstore primer is perfectly fine. A lot of people, you know, they don't feel primer is necessary. I like a primer because I have quite dry skin, so when I do my skincare, my skin absorbs a lot of it, and it can still make my makeup sit quite patchy. It doesn't matter what price point skincare I use or how careful I am, it's just my skin type, it's so dehydrated. But when I use a primer, especially an illuminating one, it just sits a bit better on the skin and lasts a lot longer. So I do prefer one, but not everyone does. But I would definitely say don't waste your money on a high-end primer when you can get some really good ones from the drugstore. The next one is foundation. So I have just grabbed this one. This is my No. 7 Hydra Luminous. This is actually my favourite foundation, and I consider this to be drugstore. Like I just said, No. 7 can be considered a bit of a higher priced drugstore brand. I know when you go in there, some of their products are quite reasonable, and then others are a bit more higher in price point, but they're not ridiculous like some high-end brands can be. But this one I really like. For me, it's like one of the only foundations that actually sits on my face properly. I think because it is a hydrating foundation, because my skin is so dry, it just sits really nice. But other foundations that I have tried that I have fallen in love with are like the Maybelline, oh my god, I can't even remember the name. I can see the bottle but I can't see the name, but it's a Maybelline one in like the glass bottle. That one was like my all-time favourite for ages, especially during the pandemic. You know, I don't like to spend too much on foundation personally. High-end ones, the high-end ones I've tried, like some of them have been okay if I'm having a really good hydrated skin day, but when I'm not, they tend to look more cakey, very heavy coverage. Yes, you can get different coverage ones from higher end brands, but the ones I've personally tried, I like, but they're not my favourites. The drugstore brands that I have used with like foundations tend to be more my jam. They tend to be a lot better looking on my skin, I feel. Obviously that's personal to everyone, but I think why go and spend a lot of money, like £34 on a foundation, when you can spend maybe £14 or a tenner on a foundation and it works just as well. So yeah, I definitely think foundation is better from the drugstore. Powder and liquid blush. So I have one from B by Superdrug. Unfortunately, I think they are closing down, but I really like this liquid blush. It looks really nice and natural on the skin. It blends out easy, but it's a Superdrug own brand. This one is an I Heart Revolution one. You know, it's a nice shade. It gives a nice coverage. It blends out quite well. So for me personally, I think with blushes for liquid and powder, Drugstore for me is the way to go. I think you don't need to waste your money on blushes like for higher end unless you really want to. I don't think you need to. I think you can get just as good quality from Drugstore brands. The only exception is cream blushes. So this is the Honest Beauty one by Jessica Alba, and I have to say I only ever like a high-end cream blush. I think the Drugstore ones, they're okay, but I do prefer it to be higher end. I just find the formulas sit a bit better on my skin. They blend out a bit easier. The ones I've used that are Drugstore, like, they might just tend to sit and stain a certain section, and when you blend it out, you can still see where you originally put it. Whereas with the higher end ones, I don't get that. So this one, and I used to like the Milk Makeup Lip and Cheek Stick. That one was fantastic, but also a higher price point. So yeah, liquid and powder, Drugstore. Cream, high end. Eyeshadow base, Drugstore. I've got the P. Louise one, which was a bit more on the expensive side. I bought it when everyone was going on about it and they loved it. And to be honest, I think you can get away with using a concealer as an eyeshadow base, or Revolution do a nice cheap one that's not going to cost the earth. I don't think you need to spend a high-end price on an eye base. Other people might disagree, but I just think, like, when I trained as an MUA, concealer is what we would use as an eye base. You know, as long as you use the right type of concealer, like, you're gonna get that grip, you're gonna get that glow from the eyeshadow because you're cancelling out all the other colours on the eyelid, like maybe red veins. You know, I think an eye base is good and I think you should use one, but I just don't think you need to pay a ridiculous amount, and they last a long time as well. So yeah, I don't think you need to spend that kind of money. Concealer, again, I'm going to go with Drugstore. This is the e.l.f. Flawless one. I absolutely love this one. Another one I really like is the Maybelline Fit Me Concealer. I also like the Revolution Eye Bright Concealer. The more higher end ones that I have tried, like I tried the NARS one, that for me was way too heavy. It looked really powdery and cakey on my skin. I always go back to Drugstore concealers. I just don't think, you know, the quality obviously is there in some of the higher end ones. Maybe I just have not found the right higher end one for me, but I'm not going to go and spend a ridiculous amount of money trying to look for one that works when I know Drugstore ones work just as well. And if one wasn't to work, I've only spent like £4 or £6 instead of like £26 or £36. So yeah, I definitely think Drugstore for concealer. You know, there are other products I think you can spend more high-end price points on than your base. I definitely think that. The one thing that I will buy from a higher end is an eye cream. So I used to really like the No. 7 ones, but I find as I'm getting older, like I'm heading towards my mid-30s, I have just found like the No. 7 one is not strong enough anymore. And although they are quite expensive with their skincare range, it's still cheaper than a lot of others on the market. The one I have found does work for me is a Lumineux one, and this is quite a high priced brand, and I really like this. So I think for eye creams, not everyone uses them. Some people are like, if you do the rest of your skincare properly, you don't need to use an eye cream. But I find for me and my aging skin, an eye cream is a must. Not only do I find that it sort of plumps out the fine lines so they're not as noticeable, but I also use it in my smile lines and my frown lines, and it sort of plumps them out a bit more as well, so the foundation and concealer doesn't all sit in those lines. Obviously you're going to get it throughout the day a little bit, but I do find using an eye cream sort of helps prevent that as much. So I definitely think a higher end eye cream is a must for someone my age, or if you have a drier skin type. Maybe if you have a certain skin type, like a normal one or a younger skin type, you might not necessarily need an eye cream, but I think when you're older you definitely do. Liquid eyeshadows. I've tried quite a few. I've got a couple of high-end, I've got a couple of drugstore. I have to say the drugstore priced ones have been a lot better for me. I feel their pigmentation is better, I feel they stay on the eye longer. And the more higher end ones that I've used, they've creased, they've peeled off, they've not lasted as long. So I definitely think save your money and go and buy like the ones from Elf. I think they are really good. Even Lady Gaga House Labs, that's sort of teetering in the middle. That one was okay, but I do prefer the Elf ones, and Revolution sometimes in their Christmas calendars do them. Those are brilliant. I wish they would bring them full time, like in there where you can buy them, because they have been really good. So yeah, I don't think you need to go and spend loads on an expensive liquid eyeshadow. I think you can just get away with drugstore ones. Setting spray. So this one is from Lumine. It is an expensive skincare brand, and I have found I really like this one. I have been using Revolution ones for quite a while, and while I do like them, this one is a lot lighter and gentler on the skin. It's not so violent when you spray it out, whereas the Revolution ones, they can be quite heavy, gloopy. Some of them I do really enjoy, but at the moment I'm sort of leaning towards, if you want a good setting spray, maybe you need to go a bit more higher end. The drugstore ones for me, while they work, they're just not as good. I prefer the higher end one. It could just be my personal preference, or maybe like this one is dewy, but it's not dewy in the fact that it sprays out a ton of glitter at you. It does like a gentle dose of glow, where I have found the more drugstore versions, they can't get that subtle glow to their setting sprays. They have full-on glitter, and I have another video, I'll try to remember to link it down below, I'll probably forget though, where I took out the glitter from my drugstore setting sprays because I couldn't stand them. They made me look like Edward Cullen. So yeah, I definitely think, I don't know what the little shake was, but yeah, I definitely think a higher end setting spray is worth spending your money on. Plus it's going to make your makeup last a lot longer. You know, so that's a good thing. That's what we all want. Powders. Yes, I have a random single powder. This is from Anastasia Beverly Hills. This is from the Contour Kit. And although this is a high-end powder, I'm going to say drugstore. I don't think you need a high-end powder. You know, it's a pressed powder. It is there to help your makeup last a bit longer. Maybe add a bit more coverage depending on the type of powder you go for. This one is okay, but I have preferred my Rimmel Stay Matte in the past. I quite liked the Revolution Relove one. Yes, towards the end of that life it did get hard pan and was annoying, so I binned it. But I just find like the more higher end powders, they're powders. At the moment I don't see a big difference. I would much rather go and spend £5 than £35 or something on a powder. I don't know whether that would be £35, but I'm just exaggerating. But you know, I'd much rather go for the drugstore option and know that they work just as well as maybe a high-end one that's like triple the price. So I definitely think drugstore for powder. Brow gels. Drugstore. So this is a Lumine one, and obviously it's quite a high-end skincare brand. While this is nice, I have found that it doesn't really hold my brows up for very long. So I will just comb them into shape, use the spoolie from this, but after a little while I find that some of the brow hairs droop, like the formula is too heavy and pulls them down. I don't have massive brows anyway, so it's a bit of a And I just find that the drugstore ones, that they last just as well or maybe even longer. So this one, it just comes with like a brush and you just sort of brush the gloop on and then comb it with a spoolie, and I have found that it lasts a lot longer than this one. So yeah, I wouldn't bother going to buy a high-end brow gel. I think a drugstore brow gel is just as good. Lip oil, high-end. So this is a YSL lip oil. I absolutely love this. This feels so nourishing on the skin. It has a slight orange tone to it, but whenever I put this one on, it lasts quite a while and it proper sinks into the lips and makes them feel hydrated. Some of the lower end, like drugstore lip oils, you have to keep applying quite a lot. Although they might sink in, they don't sink in as much as maybe this one does. And I just find they're not as comfortable, like they tend to be more heavy, whereas this one's quite a lightweight formula. So although it feels like you've got something on your lips, it's not too exaggerated, it's not too in your face, you're not feeling like gloopy, if you get my gist. So yeah, I definitely think with a lip oil, a higher end one is better than the drugstore one, but that is just my personal preference. Lipsticks. So I have grabbed the Revolution and Bratz lipstick. I think this is in the shade Yasmin. This is one of my all-time favourite lipsticks. It just has such a nice shade to it, and it lasts a long time as well. So I'm going to say with lipsticks like Bullet Formula, but also liquid lipsticks, drugstore, especially Revolution. I have tried many high-end liquid lipsticks and lipsticks like Kylie Cosmetics, Estee Lauder, Elizabeth Arden, not Estee Lauder, Huda Beauty, and I always find myself going back to Revolution and the cheaper lipsticks, and they last longer and they look nice, and I like the colour tones and the ranges and the shades, but also the price point. Like if you want to buy a ton of lipstick, it's not going to cost you the earth, whereas if you go to these higher end brands, it's going to cost you a lot of money. And I just feel, you know, drugstore. I do have one from MAC. I have my MAC Velvet Teddy that I absolutely love. But even then, this is the mini size, so it was only like £12 or £15 from Boots, which is still very expensive for a small size lipstick. But again, I sort of begrudge paying any more than that for a lipstick because I know that I love my drugstore ones, and I think you don't need those higher end price tags. Eyeshadow Sticks. So this is a Charlotte Tilbury one in the shade Dark Pearl. Just there. And then this one is the e.l.f. one in Rose Gold. Now while they both look really pretty and they are completely different shades, I will give them that, I definitely think you have to go high end with an eyeshadow stick. I have had so many problems with this e.l.f. one. I don't know whether it's just mine, whether it's a dud, whether it was a bad batch, but I have just found I've had so many problems with it. Like when I first used it, it fell out. I don't know whether it will now because I did push it back down, but I used it and the whole thing fell out of the tube, which was ridiculous. So I pushed it back in and started to use it and was doing all that business, and then the end broke off. You know, so I've just found the quality not to be that great. The formula was nice and it did create a nice eye look. It was very pretty. But for me, like the Charlotte Tilbury one has just been a lot better in like quality. Like it lasts a lot longer. The formula is really nice and creamy. It doesn't tug on the eye, whereas this one did tug a little bit. But also I have not had it fall apart on me. So I definitely think if you go for a stick eyeshadow, you're going to have to go high end. That's just my personal opinion. Mascara. Okay, so for ages I was very much a drugstore mascara girl. I have changed sides and I have gone to high end. So this is the Bare Minerals Lashtopia. I absolutely love this. I definitely want to buy another one of these when this one is out because I love it. Like I put some on this morning for the school run. I have just put some eyeshadow on. I've topped up my mascara. It doesn't go clumpy. It doesn't flake. you can rebuild on it hours after using it, which I really like. It's easy to come off. It doesn't really give me any like transfer onto my brow bone or under my eye. With drugstore ones at the moment, I've not had a great time with drugstore mascara. I have found so many of them flake, they don't do very much to my lashes, they transfer, they gave me allergic reactions. There was one from the drugstore that I did really like, and that was the Maybelline, the Colossal Big Curl Bounce Mascara. That one was a good one, but I do have to say I definitely think at the moment for me a higher end mascara is better than a drugstore one, just because of the experience I've had at the moment. Maybe if I try some other drugstore ones I might find one that I love again, but at the moment the Bare Minerals for me is, that's it, that's the be all and end all in mascara. Bronzer, I think drugstore. So this isn't an Aldi Lacura one, it was the naughty one that It was the naughty one that copied Charlotte Tilbury, but as you can see I have absolutely hit pan and loved the bronzing shade in here. It is more of like a contour, I think people would really call it. I use it as a bronzer, you know, you do you. But I definitely think that I prefer more drugstore bronzers than I do to higher end ones. I just find I like the formula in the drugstore ones. They tend to be not as pigmented and a bit easier to blend, which for my skin tone is good, because if I put anything too dark on it's just going to look really jarring. For other skin tones you might lean more to higher end if you want that more pigmentation in a product, but for me I personally like a drugstore one. With highlighter though, I prefer a higher end one. So Becca has been a long time favourite highlighter of mine, or company that sold highlighters. They don't anymore, they're no longer around. But I had a face palette from the Chloe and Malika collection. I annihilated the highlighter in that. This one is really pretty. I do like a drugstore highlighter, like don't get me wrong, but I tend to find the more higher end ones are more gentle shimmery glow, but you can build it up and make it more. Whereas the drugstore ones tend to be like shimmer with a ton of glitter, and they can be like quite jarring, quite heavy looking, can sort of accentuate any dry patches or pores, whereas the higher end one for me is just more finely milled and just works better on my skin tone personally. Next up, eyeliner, liquid eyeliner. So I have a House Labs one and I also have a Revolution Relove. I do really like both of these. I think for a liquid eyeliner, so this one is more, oh my god if I can open it, more of that liquidy one that you can just sort of draw on with the brush. I do say I tend to like more drugstore ones for this. I really liked the W7 one that I reviewed I think last year. That one was brilliant. I did buy another one, so I think for liquidy ones, drugstore. But for a fine tipped pen liner one, I tend to go a bit more higher end. I don't know whether Lady Gaga's House Labs brand is classed as high end, because I mean I got this in a sale, but I guess it is, because like it's roughly like £18 or something ridiculous for this, but I bought this in the sale and it has been my favourite eyeliner ever. So I think for a felt tip one, usually a higher end brand are a bit better. I just find the formula is good, there's no creasing or flaking, and also the nib is like soft enough that it doesn't tug or pull at the eye, but it's hard enough that it keeps its shape so it flows nicely. So yeah, I think higher end for that one. Skincare. Lately I'm on team higher end. So I really like the Lumineux skincare at the moment. I recently had COVID and oh my god, it took it out of my skin. My skin was so dry, it was flaking, it was horrendous, it was horrible. And I was using like my normal number 7 skincare, nothing was working, nothing was bringing it back to life. So I bought myself the Illuminate Advent Calendar from Feel Unique, where you've got like loads of different sample pots. And I have to say, I'm definitely team high-end for skincare now, because it has rescued my skin from COVID. Like, I've definitely got a lot more moisture back in my skin. My skin is not as dry. So I do have like the moisturizers and serums. So I definitely think that a higher end brand, for me personally, is a lot better. I think if you are like me and your skin is aging and you have drier skin, I think investing in a more higher end brand is going to be a bit better. There are really good drugstore skincare brands out there. You just have to go around and look and see what suits your skin and your budget personally. But I do like higher end. Obviously I wouldn't normally purchase Illuminate because they are expensive, but I got the calendar on a really good deal, and then I did a pay monthly payment plan to get it. You know, so if you haven't got that option, there are drugstore alternatives that can be just as good. But for me at the moment, high-end skincare is better for my skin. Sponges. I'm going to say drugstore, because I have had like higher end sponges like sent to me or in calendars, and they have fallen apart quicker than the drugstore ones. So I would definitely say for sponges, go for drugstore. You only use them for a limited amount of time before they get manky anyway. Obviously you have to keep washing them to make sure they're not full of germs, which again is gonna, you know, break down the sponge quicker because you're washing it all the time. But I just find, what is the point in paying for a higher end sponge when a drugstore one does just as well? Brushes. So I would actually say drugstore. I have quite a collection. I have some higher end brushes that were sent to me. I have drugstore ones that were sent to me. I have ones that I've bought from the drugstore, some that I've got from calendars. And I have to say, my favourite eyeshadow brushes and even face brushes are the drugstore ones. Those are the ones that I will reach for on the daily when I am playing with makeup. I don't know, I prefer how they are. I think the more higher end ones, I don't know, I have just found like they don't last as long, or like if you wash them they sort of lose their shape or go a bit broomsticky, whereas the drugstore ones I have found, yes, they might be technically a lower quality bristle, but I found that they keep their shape more, and some of them can be really soft and gentle as well on the eye area. So yeah, I definitely think drugstore is the way to go for makeup brushes. I think high end, you're just paying for a name on a stick, whereas a drugstore one, you're just buying it so you can use it on your eye and create a look. You're not going to walk down the road and someone's going to be like, ha, she used that high-end makeup brush today. No one's going to know. I mean, that could be said for any of the makeup products. No one is going to know. Okay, so I have a higher end eyeshadow palette and a drugstore eyeshadow palette. What would I go for? Drugstore or high end? Drugstore. I have so many drugstore palettes in my collection and I adore pretty much most of them. I have a few higher end ones, and while they are okay, they work. I prefer the formula and the way that my drugstore ones work. And the thing is as well, as I really like to collect eyeshadow palettes, so the price point is a lot better for like a £10 eyeshadow palette, like a £45 one. For me, trying to weigh up the cost because I like to collect eyeshadow, I'm definitely going to lean towards more drugstore. Plus I like how playful drugstore makeup eyeshadow palettes can be. If you look at Revolution, Colourpop, their palettes are very playful and the packaging just looks cute and it draws you in. I find sometimes with the higher end ones, like they can try to look really sophisticated but they just end up looking boring. So yeah, for me, drugstore. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video of finding out what products I think you should just buy from the drugstore and other ones you should go for high end. I hope you liked it. If you did, give it a thumbs up and let me know down below, what products would you rather buy from the drugstore? Which ones would you rather buy high end? I would love to know. And yeah, we'll leave it there. See you all later. Bye.